Stuck deciding between one of the most promising smartphones of all time and one of the most popular? Let us help you with that. I'm Michael Fisher, this is Pocket Now, and this is Nokia Lumia 1020 versus Samsung Galaxy S4. Maybe it's fitting that the two most visible flagships of the Android and Windows Phone platforms couldn't possibly be more different. But it also means we have a lot to compare, and not a lot of time to do it. So let's dive in. We'll start with the least relevant aspects of these devices from the perspective of the average buyer, and we'll work our way up to the more important stuff. That means we're starting with specs, with a quick pit stop to remind you to follow Pocket Now on social media so you don't miss future coverage on the Lumia 1020 and other mobile devices. So the Galaxy S4 is absolutely the clear winner here in terms of processing horsepower. Our AT&T branded device packs the Qualcomm Snapdragon 600, a quad-core SoC running at 1.9 GHz and backed up by 2 gigs of RAM and 16 gigs of onboard storage. The RAM is matched by the Lumia, but the processing power is not. The 1020 gets its power from an older dual-core Snapdragon S4 running at 1.5 GHz. And while the Lumia's 32 gigs of onboard storage outclasses the 16 gigs on this particular Galaxy S4, the Samsung phone's capacity is expandable via micro SD, while the Lumia's is not. That holds true for the replaceable 2600 mAh battery on Samsung's Galaxy S4, which outclasses the 2000 mAh battery embedded in the Lumia. And then there's the AMOLED screens. The Samsung panel at 4.8 inches and 1080p trounces the 4.5-inch WXGA display on the Lumia. And this bloodbath isn't even taking into account the octa-core and expanded memory variants of the Galaxy S4. So, look, if you're buying exclusively on specs, you can stop here. Samsung wins. But two things. One, we've still got a camera section to get to. And two, in this case, specs are pretty irrelevant. So let's start talking about what really matters, the user experience. That experience starts the first time you pick a phone up, and each of these devices is incredibly distinctive. At 130 grams and 7.9 millimeters thin, the Galaxy S4 is an ultra-light, super pocketable smartphone. It's so lightweight that sometimes it doesn't even feel real. Its build is polycarbonate and Gorilla Glass 3, but its body is also finished in Samsung's glossy hyperglaze coating and accented with faux metallic trim. The net effect is a phone that looks quite nice on the table, but which loses some of its premium feel when picked up. The Nokia device is, put simply, none of that. Its polycarbonate build is naked and matte instead of glossy, the material almost feeling like bone or a blackboard or something. The Gorilla Glass display protection, also third generation here, curves ever so slightly toward the sides, where the keys are aluminum and include a dedicated camera shutter. And speaking of that camera, it's huge. The aluminum PureView module sticks out like a moon crater from the backside of the 1020, boosting its thickness to 10.4 millimeters and its mass to 158 grams. This phone is neither subtle nor dainty. In the hand, it's decidedly more awkward than the more conventional S4, but to some, it'll also be more intriguing by virtue of that strangeness. Whether that holds true for the Lumia's Windows Phone 8 software experience compared to the Galaxy S4's Android Jelly Bean OS will depend on you. The differences in interface are apparent from the first power on. Microsoft's Windows Phone emphasizes glanceable information in flipping live tiles and a Spartan minimalism that not only keeps it classy, but keeps it fluid despite the Lumia's last generation guts. On the flip side, Samsung's TouchWiz UI atop Android Jelly Bean is so heavy and loaded with features that it tends to bog down at times, despite the Galaxy S4's powerful hardware.